second in a series of 3 videos on the why, the what, and the how of fact-checking. So what is fact-checking? Well, when it comes to political misinformation, the answer to what is fact-checking is checking to see that your politicians are telling you what's true. It's kind of a dumb, simple answer. Well, the first thing I have to say clearly about the what question is something that is not fact-checking, and that is checking online with the people you like to see what they say about a certain issue. That is not fact-checking. It is exactly the opposite of fact-checking, and it would be better called confirming your biases, not fact-checking. But the other more complicated part of this question is, what do I need to fact-check? Well, obviously, any political speech, any political debate, any political convention, any political ad. In fact, ads are a lot of times the worst source of falsehood in political content. These all have to be fact-checked. What about journalists and news sites? Do they need to be fact-checked? Well, this is a very interesting question because there's a certain political persona out there that has made a lot about fake news. Now, I actually don't know if Donald Trump has actually defined fake news ever. If all he means by it is that a lot of journalists are biased against him, well, I'll give him that. We are all biased. We all grew up with different experiences, different influences. We all have our own biases, and I would absolutely give it to him if that's all he means by it. The only folks who are completely objective and not biased at all are Vulcans, androids, and robots. Okay, so the last one wasn't a great example of objectivity, but the point is, we all have our biases. Unfortunately, I think what most people think Donald Trump means by fake news is that he thinks that news sites and journalists are making up false stories about him. Now, I fully believe that journalists have biases, and even that their biases can come out in the reporting, but I've got some non-fake news for some of you folks. If a journalist in this country knowingly puts out a story that's false about someone, guess what? They're going to lose their job. And they're probably not going to get another job in journalism. You won't get a pass with that. This is such a fundamental part of journalism. I want to give you a medical analogy for this idea of journalists knowingly putting out stories that are false. Now, if I started killing patients for fun in the ER, my boss is not going to come to me and say, "Hey, Steve, could you stop killing patients for fun? You know, it's not really very good medicine, and we're getting a lot of family complaints about you killing their mother, father, sister, brother, and kind of looking like you're enjoying it. And, you know, it's really horrible public relations for the hospital." No, he's not going to say that. He's going to say, "You're fired. And you know what? I'm not going to get another job in medicine. I'm going to lose my license. I'm going to actually go to jail." Now, a journalist is not going to go to jail for putting out a story that's false about somebody, but I'm going to go to jail. But that's kind of the medical equivalent of a journalist putting out a false story about someone. Now, are journalists biased? Yes, because they're human beings. They're not Vulcans, androids, or robots. You like that one better, don't you? So yeah, they are biased. And I will tell you their bias can come out in the reporting, but they're not going to be putting out false stories about people. So how does bias show up with news organizations and journalists? Well, it might easily show up in what stories they decide to cover. That definitely happens. Now, journalists are trained to keep their biases out of the reporting, but the other way it can show up is by just how they present a story. If a journalist focuses on certain aspects of a story and kind of either ignores or minimizes other aspects, you can actually get an impression that's not exactly true, even if the journalist is not actually saying something that's false. This is especially a problem with the commentary part of news sites and news organizations because it's very much easier to give a wrong impression when you're doing an opinion piece because you are going to focus on those parts of the story that support your point of view most. Now, this is a hard concept to get without examples, and I do have a couple examples in my last video, the how video. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about with that, please watch that video. Now, I'm going to tell you, I don't usually sit down after I read the news and fact check it, like I would, for example, a political debate. And that's because my standard fact-checking routine that I do every week is very good at picking up those little biases that can come out in regular reporting. Because the fact-checking websites are very good not only at pointing out what's false, but pointing out when the presentation is, well, not really the whole story. So my routine picks those things up, which is why I don't sit down and actually decide to fact-check what a journalist says. Although I would tell you to get on a fact-checking website after a political debate and check it, I'm not going to tell you to do that for journalists, because if you do what I'm going to say in the next video about routine fact-checking, you won't need to do that. This was the what video. Thanks for watching, but check out my how video where I talk about my routine for fact-checking and how you can fact-check too.